Hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Right now, it's time for hell.
Thank you for taking time for Hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. You are listening to Time for Hemp all around the world on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio. Anywhere where there is sound found on the internet, we are around to be found on the internet. And I want to thank you for tuning in and sharing us with your friends. It is Wednesday, and on Wednesday we put a spotlight on some of the amazing people that are working to dedicate their lives to ending prohibition, people who have really put a dent, should we say, in the government's attempt to outlaw this plant. And they have done it with serious research, and they've done it with serious personal, I would say personal loss, but a lot of people who are involved don't count it as a loss. They count it as a wonderful way to spend their time, but all these horrible laws surely has us doing an awful lot of work just to turn back time. Don't they, Lenny?
That's a fact. And today, we have a true superhero as a guest. We have Irv Rosenfeld. You know him. I'm not going to give away all the surprises, but let me start by getting this piece out of the way. Pseudo-hypoparathyroidism. Irv?
Yes, it's actually pseudo-hypoparathyroidism, and or a variant of that. Plus, I've got multiple congenital cartilaginous exostosis, or better known today as multiple hereditary exostosis, which means bone tumors on the ends of long bones all throughout my body, about 200 of them. That with the second disorder, the hypoparathyroidism, says that they can grow at any time, and new ones can develop at any age. And the last tumor that I had to grow or develop was when I was 21, and I'm now almost 64. And the doctors have no idea why the tumors haven't grown or new ones develop. Well, I know why. It's the cannabis. It's a tumor inhibitor. It keeps the tumors from growing. So I'm very fortunate to have the right medicine and be as healthy as I am with a severe bone disorder.
What I'm thinking is the irony is that when you say end of long bones, I think, well, that's the part that goes into the joints, which would make movement difficult.
It is. It makes movement very difficult. But also, that when I say the end of long bones, some of them grow outwardly before the end of the long bone. But they're all long bones, like on the arms, the legs, your shoulders, your ribs, so, and I've got them on my fingers, for that matter. So, yeah, it's pretty prevalent. I mean, it's one of the worst cases in the country. At least when I was diagnosed at 1963 at age 10, the doctor, the Center for this disease, who I went to, said it was one of the worst cases he'd ever seen. And they said they didn't know if I'd outlived my teenage years. And like I said, I'm 64 now, almost 64, so I beat him.
What's the secret? This is not an infomercial. How did you do this? How did this happen?
Well, I was very fortunate. My family was in medicine. My great-uncle at one point was head of pediatrics at Johns Hopkins. My regular uncle taught pediatrics at Yale, worked with Dr. Spock. My sister was head of nuclear medicine at Duke. So when they diagnosed my disorder, I was sent to the best center in the country and was told at age 10 how to take care of myself. And I was taught everything about my bone disorder as much as any orthopedic surgeon would know. Because as they said, I was the only one that could make decisions on when to have surgery. Not my parents, not the doctor. And because I had so many tumors, there were parameters set up. And so I had to make the decisions that if a tumor grew very quickly, it had to come out, whether it hurt or not. If it was growing towards a growth center, it had to come out. Or if it was, again, bothering me, it was an area that bothered me, then it had to come out. So I had all the operations during my teenage years and up to age 19 and 20 that needed to be done. But again, at 18 and a half, I'd taken all the regular prescriptions that were, given to me by doctors as far as the pain meds, as far as morphine, Demerol, Dilaudid, things like that, sleeping medicines such as methacrylone or Quaalude, muscle relaxants, paraffin forte, Lorisol. I mean, you name the prescription, I had it. And so I was a walking pharmacy. but it helped. I mean, it did cloud you a little bit, but it was still better than putting up with the pain and the problems and not sleeping and all that. And then it was in college, after being an advocate against illegal drugs in high school, saying, why would a healthy person do illegal drugs when here I had to be, do all these legal drugs and fortunate to be alive, that in college in Miami, in 1971, marijuana was becoming very prevalent in my apartment complex, mostly students. And we'd be out swimming, and they'd go, let's go drink some wine and smoke some pot. And I wouldn't do it. So it was about the 10th time, it was about, I guess about 30 days after they'd asked me to go smoke a bunch of times, and I realized I wasn't making any friends because I wouldn't partake of marijuana. And so I gave in to peer pressure. It didn't seem to be harming the other students, so I figured, why not try? And I did it, and it didn't do anything to me. So it was about the 10th time I did it that I played a game of chess, and I sat for 30 minutes, which was the first time in 5 years I'd sat for more than 10 minutes. Normally we'd be sitting for 10 minutes and standing for 10 minutes. So immediately I thought, in what way did I take all the narcotics and drugs that I had to allow me to sit for the first time? And it dawned on me I hadn't taken a pill for like 6 hours. Well, then how could I sit? And just then they handed me the joint. It was my turn. And I looked at this piece of garbage because to me that's all marijuana was. I wasn't getting high off of it. And I thought, this is the only thing I've done differently. I wonder if this garbage has any medical benefit. So I reached out to my family and told them what happened. We did research, and that's when we found, lo and behold, this was a legal medicine in the United States from 1850 to 1937. It was used for many different disorders, prevalently muscle relaxant, anti-inflammatory for pain, and it was manufactured mostly in tincture form by Eli Lilly, by Merck, by Squibb, all the major pharmaceutical companies. And so I said, voila, maybe that's what it's doing for me. It's giving me muscle relaxant, anti-inflammatory, and helping with the pain. I've got to research this. So that's when I went out and bought it, and I would use it for 3 weeks, get miraculously better. My intake of Dilaudid and other synthetic morphine and other narcotics decreased by 60, 70, in some cases 80%. And then, but it was a warm climate in Miami, plus my tumors supposedly had stopped growing, so maybe it was a warm climate over Miami that was giving me the benefits of the medical aspect. But then I'd stop using it for a week, and I'd go right back downhill. And I did this 4 times until I realized, I hate to admit it was that goddamn illegal drug. And in my studies, I'd found out that the government had their own farm on the campus of the University of Mississippi since 1968, where they were growing marijuana for research, for medical research. So I thought, well, maybe let me try to go after that facility. So I contacted my orthopedic surgeon, who'd known me since age 10, and told him I was planning to drop out of school and write up my own scientific project, making my orthopedic surgeon as the researcher and myself as the patient. And because my disease is so rare, that it wouldn't be opening up a Pandora's box if I could get the federal government to go along with this. And my orthopedic surgeon agreed that he would be glad to sign anything I put in front of him as long as it's legitimate. So I went back to Virginia after 3 semesters in college, at which I made Dean's List, and it was the first time in 8 years I'd been in school, or 5 years I'd been in school. And so I went back to Virginia, and I started taking on the federal government in 1972. So from a research study to being not looked upon very, just being ignored. Then Bob Randall became the first patient in 1976. I had the honor of meeting him in 1977, late 77, and that's when he was on what was called a Compassionate Care Investigational New Drug Program, Compassionate Care IND. And so after meeting him and after him reading what I had done so far with the scientific study, he said, let's turn this around to a Compassionate Care IND. And my doctor we wrote it up. My doctor loved it. And he said, well, I'll be glad to sign this. And we did. And then the government stonewalled me for another 5 years. So in the meantime, I'd gotten my congressman behind me. I'd gotten the state of Virginia to pass a law in my favor, which they did, which allowed a doctor to prescribe marijuana, which was the wrong wordage, but in 79 we didn't realize that we could prescribe marijuana for pain due to cancer and glaucoma. So I came under Virginia law, so I don't have to worry about it. But one of the things I digress to is in 1972, when I decided to take on the federal government, I had gone to the chief of police in my hometown in Portsmouth, Virginia, and told him what I was planning to do. And I asked him for confiscated marijuana so I wouldn't have to deal with the criminal element. Like I said, this was 1972. He checked me out through the school system, through the leaders of the community and everything else, and they all said how I was lucky to be alive, that I was an advocate against illegal drugs, and if I was saying that marijuana now was a needed medicine for me, then it must be, and that they should supply it. Well, the local police didn't want to do that because, number one, it'd be breaking federal law, even though I said, hey, look, screw federal law. I'm not going to say anything. You're not going to say anything. And they said, well, the thing is that if you catch something from confiscated marijuana, you could sue the city. And I said, I'll indemnify the city. He said, I thought of that, but the city attorney said you could still sue us. So he said, Irvin, look, he said, I understand what you're trying to do. I understand you're a patient, not a criminal. So God forbid if anything happens to you legally with marijuana, as long as you're not selling it. He said, you have the police call me and I'll take care of it. So even from 72 on, I felt very comfortable about using marijuana, at least in the surrounding area of Tidewater, Virginia, not traveling to other states or anything like that. So then in 1979, my cousin started law school at UVA. And I thought this would be a great project for 3-year law students, for for second and third year law students. And it turned out one of the heads of the law school actually was from Portsmouth. And it turned out that he knew my parents and I knew his. And my sister and him actually went through high school together. So he took me on. They took me on as a client. And it took 3 long years. And finally they ordered, they were going to sue FDA on my behalf. And FDA ordered hearings for me to go before 20 doctors to present my case. And Bob Randall, who was the only patient at the time in D.C., he lived in D.C., said this was going to be open hearings. I'm going to go to Rockville, Maryland, and put up posters all around the building saying, come to these hearings. And so he did that. We had about 100 people that showed up at the hearings. I had 15 minutes to convince this panel that my project was valid. I told them the whole story, and you could just see in their eyes they had no intentions of doing anything. So then when I finished, the head of the committee said, are there any questions from the audience? And a gentleman in a white coat raised his hand and said, I have more of a statement than a question. So the chairman said, what's your statement? He said, I'm a visiting oncologist from Venezuela. I'm here studying pain treatments for cancer patients. And I've learned the best pain treatment you have in this country is the same thing we have in Venezuela, which is Dilaudid, synthetic morphine. And this person just said that his doctor and him have been studying the effects of an adjunct medicine, meaning with marijuana and Dilaudid, to where when he had marijuana, he took much less Dilaudid, and when he didn't have marijuana, he took more Dilaudid. He said, this needs to be studied with a regular supply. And when he said that, you could see the faces on the panel. It's like, oh, shit, we just lost. and so this chairman was so stunned that he didn't say anything. So I then said, hey, is there any more questions or statements from the audience? And there were none. So I looked at the chairman. I said, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. And so he then looked to his right, and all the doctors looked away from him. He then looked to his left, and all the doctors looked away from him. He then looked at me and said, Mr. Rosenfeld, I think I can speak for the entire committee, that your presentation is very eloquent, and you will become the second person in the United States to receive medical cannabis from the federal government. And that's how I won. So, but the grace of God, but for the grace of God, that's how I won.
Now, after what sounds like at least an 8-year battle, right up to the top and doing what some few try, and no one wins. You win, you're number 2, and then let's take that a step further. With this approval, where did the pot come from?
Well, first of all, it took 10 years. It was a 10-year trial and tribulations to get it. And secondly, cannabis came from the farm in Mississippi, on the campus, University of Mississippi. That's the only farm, and to this day, that's the only farm that's legally allowed to grow and provide marijuana for any government research. Now, that has changed, where DEA has said now there can be other grows, but nobody's been approved yet. But that's where the medicine came. It grows on the campus of the University of Mississippi in Oxford, Mississippi. There they take the plant, entire plant, and they send it to Raleigh, North Carolina, to Raleigh Research Triangle. There it's put in cigarette form. It's pulverized. They use the entire plant. It's pulverized, and then they roll it up into cigarettes by a cigarette machine. They put it, and they freeze dry it. They take the moisture level out of it so it doesn't degrade when they freeze it. Because we've had medicine that's been frozen for as old as 12 years. The medicine I'm getting right now is packaged in January of 2009. Okay, is what I'm getting now. But they freeze dry it, and they package it 300 cigarettes to a tin can, and that's how it's shipped out to the patients, which today we're down to 2 of us in the country who get it that way.
It's down to 2 now?
Down to 2, yeah, just LV and I. LV Musika, who gets it for glaucoma, and myself. There are 2 other patients, George McMahon in Iowa and Barbara Douglas in Iowa. And they were on the program, but their doctor is no longer practicing medicine. And so they lost their prescription. So they don't have a doctor to write a prescription.
Okay, so but we still have 4 alive. That's
still 4 alive, yes.
I thought we'd lost 2 more.
No, George and Barbara are still living. It's just that they don't have access to the cannabis anymore. And we've been looking nationwide for a doctor who's willing to treat them. And so far we've come up empty-handed. So if there's any doctor out there that's willing to take on 2 patients in Iowa, they can transfer a Schedule I license to you. And what it would mean is you would have to come to Iowa and see the patients at least once a year, maybe twice. And Barbara Douglas does have the financial means to do that, okay, to bring you into Iowa so you could treat Barbara and George, because George does not have any funds at all, but Barbara does. So anybody out there, be great.
I have to believe that as we make the progress we're all making, climbing on your back when we can, with all that progress, I think more and more MDs are being won around. And, for example, I know one very well who might say, that may be a brilliant idea. I'm not permitted by my group to write, but it's a fine idea. And more and more, I think they'll be willing to get on board because, as you and I know, and as Casper knows, the evidence is irrefutable. And when people say things like, well, we need to do more research, go to PubMed, plug in marijuana. We're up around 20,000 studies, either all of which or most of which are peer-reviewed on the various medical aspects of marijuana. This is stuff we know already. So University of Mississippi sends you marijuana.
Well, it's from Raleigh Research Triangle is where it comes from. Okay,
with the blessing of the federal government.
With the blessing of the federal government, correct. Under NIDA, DEA, and FDA are the three government agencies that oversee my program. Yep.
Okay.
And they ship in 610s. They ship in 610s every 5 months for me. And then I pick up
6 tin cans. 6
tin cans, correct, with 300 cigarettes apiece, about a half a pound each. Each can is about a half a pound. So they ship in 3 pounds at a time. And then I, Bascom Palmer, the Eye Institute in Miami, which is my project with School of Neurology in Miami, they take the medicine in, and then I go down there and pick up whatever I need when I need it. I could pick up all 6 tins if I wanted to. That's really up to me. And but I don't need to hold that much. So they've got locked refrigerated safes. So they keep it. They keep it for me.
Now,
so much easier.
These tin cans are rather interesting. On the side of them, are there any directions for a recommended dosage on the label from the government?
Since 1996, when I've been getting it from Bascom Palmer, there is my prescription right on the can. So it says Bascom Palmer. It says my doctor's name, which of course he's never gone public, so I scratch out. Once I utilize the can for other reasons. And it says in there, use 10 marijuana cigarettes per day. It's got on there, of course, his DEA license number. It's got on there the date that the medicine came in. It's got on there 1,800, because that's how many cigarettes came in on that shipment. It's 300 a can, 6 tins. And also on the can is usually 1 or 2 government labels that talks about when it was packaged and how much each cigarette weighs, how much the glue weighs, how much the paper weighs. It gives in there the amount of THC. Like what I'm getting now is middle strength by the federal government, which is 3.99 THC, which, as our listeners will realize, it's quite low. But it works for me as a muscle relaxant, anti-inflammatory for pain, and it's kept the tumors from growing. And since I don't get high anyway, that really doesn't bother me. But my doctor's not the most knowledgeable. And LV called me one time years ago and says, Irvin, they just came out with a new strain. It's 5.99. He said, maybe you should try it, see if you can smoke less or see if it helps you better. I go, that's a good idea, LV. Next time I go to the doctor and it's time to put a reorder in, I'll suggest it. So I went to see him, and I told him about this, and he made the statement, 5.99? 5.99, that'll fry your brain. I'm not going to let you fry your brain. So he's not the most knowledgeable. So, look, I'm thankful to get it. It works, and so I can't push the envelope. So even if the government came out with something better, which they won't, but if they did, I still wouldn't be able to get it, not with this doctor.
Just for a quick comparison, there was an advertisement in the Boulder County, Colorado newspaper yesterday. I believe it was yesterday or the day before. One of the recreational, legal marijuana stores was running a sale, and they had 2 different strains. One was not 3.9, not 5.9% THC, 35%. 35%. Now, to me, that means, all right, you take a half a toke and you put it down, or one small bowl. It doesn't mean you smoke the same 3/4 or full joint. And the government is sending you, if our numbers are right, they're saying a half a pound a month is your prescription, basically.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. 10 a day. So that comes out to 300 cigarettes per month.
So after smoking or while smoking 10 joints a day,
mm-hmm.
Is it fair to say that means you lay on the couch smoking cigarettes and watching Captain Kangaroo?
No, not at all. No, I don't sit on the sofa and watch TV. What I do is I get up in the morning and I turn on the TV and watch CNBC, watch my business shows because I'm a stockbroker. So I sit and smoke 2 joints watching my business shows, finding out what went on overnight. Then I shower, get dressed, and get in my car. And the drive to Boca right now is about a 30 to 40-minute drive. So I smoke another 1 to 2 joints while I'm driving, which I'm legally allowed to do because my protocol says that I can operate dangerous machinery as long as I'm not intoxicated. And since I get no high off marijuana, off any marijuana, even that 35% you're talking about, I wouldn't get euphoric. I might feel a lot better, but I wouldn't get euphoric. That I can drive, so that smokes another 2 joints. Then I come in and usually get my computer set for the day, and then I walk outside and smoke another joint. So at this point, I've had almost 5. Then at lunch, if after lunch I will go out and smoke another joint if I'm not that busy or something. And again, my clients know that if it's something he's doing right away, they call me. And if it's something, hey, Irvin, I want to do a trade, and then I come right back in and do the trade. But since all my clients know I use it, if they're calling me up just to ask me something about their account or Irvin, I'm looking at this one stock, I'm thinking about buying it. Can you check it out for me? Then I'll tell them, look, do you need it right now? Or I'm outside taking my medicine. They just go, oh, no, go ahead. Take your 20 minutes, take your medicine, and, call me back. So they all know, that I use it. So then after work, I'll smoke a joint. After at 4 o'clock, 4:15, when the market closes, at 4 o'clock, I'll go outside and smoke a joint. Then come back in and do more work. And then on the way home, smoke. And then once I get home, I have dinner, and then I smoke another couple joints. And so that's about 10 a day. And that's how I'm able to get in 10 cigarettes a day. But sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes I don't get in 10 a day. So on weekends, what I try to do is catch up. So on weekends, sometimes I've smoked 15 in a day, something like that.
To keep the therapeutic level more constant.
To definitely keep the therapeutic level more more consistent. Because for me, it's a loading dose type drug. And so I just smoke whenever I can. It's not like I wait and see, wait till it starts getting bad or something like that. No, just any free time I have, I'm smoking and taking my medicine. So therefore, I keep a constant level. And that seems to work best for me. Mm-hmm.
Question. As a stockbroker, your profession, are you accepting new clients?
Of course. All the time.
And is it, if you think it's appropriate, I would appreciate it if you would put in an email, a website, or a plug so that our listeners who are so inclined can reach you.
Well, I cannot mention the name of the firm.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Gotcha. Understood.
But I can say this. My phone number is 954-689-6875. And I'll repeat that. You can write it down.
That again.
954-689-6875.
Thank you.
Is what it is. And you were talking about the tin cans. And again, those are collector's items. I mean, there's only 2 of us in the country getting them now. And what I do with the empty tin cans is I do sell them. And I sell them for $420. Gee, I'm not sure how I came up with that figure, how we came up with that figure, but $420 was the figure we came up with. So we sell those, and again, what I use the money for is for travel. Meaning, if I'm going, like I just went to Puerto Rico a month ago to speak for their country, for their policy, so I use the money to help offset the travel costs and things like that. Where, like, let's say a state wants me to fly up there to meet with their legislative branch, and they go, "What's it going to cost us?" Well, why don't you get some people to buy 3 or 4 tin cans, and that'll be the expense. That'll cover everything. And that's what they'll do. And
you also donate some for auctions, like normal auctions.
I have definitely donated in the past for normal, for Patients at a Time, for MPP. or for any worthwhile, endeavor. In Iowa and in Ohio one time, they had a medical marijuana march they were putting on throughout the state, and I donated a tin can for that. So, yeah, I mean, the whole point is, in 1982, there was Robert Randall and there was myself. We were the only two legal patients in the country. And we decided at that point that we were going to teach the entire world about the benefits of medical cannabis. We knew it. We knew how beneficial it was, but we were going to teach the entire world. So that's what we set about to do. Because when somebody has a devastating disorder, my bone disorder or Bob Randall's glaucoma, I mean, it sucks. I mean, you don't ask for this. You don't ask for the problem. A person would say, well, gosh, if I can just get cancer, I could get marijuana for the anti-nausea for the treatment when they give me chemotherapy. Nobody does that. But when you do get a devastating disorder, you want to just have the best doctor possible and the best medicine possible. And if you can utilize that to help other people, then it makes you feel better. Because then you can almost look at your disorder and say, hey, screw you. Look what I've done because of you. Look how many millions and millions of people I've helped. So that's what's been so important to Bob and myself, all these years. And then when Bob died in 2001, which was very devastating, I mean, he was the greatest, then I've tried to do my best to continue to teach, the different people about the benefits of medical cannabis. It's not the hysteria people make it out to be. And the sad part is the opposition, won't get on the stage and debate me, like Drug Free America or any of those organizations. They won't debate me, okay, because I'm living proof that it works. I mean, I've used it for 34 years almost. And so it's a hard one to argue when the person's beside you, especially when you say to the person who's an anti-drug, have you ever tried this? Have you? And, of course, they're going to probably say no. Well, that's like somebody saying, well, chocolate ice cream is really bad. It tastes really bad. It's really bad for you. And you go, well, have you ever tried it? Well, no, but I know it's really bad for you. But you never tried it. And you're telling me it's so bad, So that's the way I like to say to them. You think it's so bad? Well, have you ever really tried it? And, of course, even if they have, they're not going to admit it, So
more and more, some are coming out of the closet. It does amuse me. I bought one of your donated cans at a normal legal committee auction, and I'm sitting here smiling because what I paid for it was $500.
Okay.
So the number was right. The bid was right.
Yes, it was. And I tell you, Elvy's talked about raising our prices because we're the only two left, And I just said, Elvy, no, let's get these cans out. It's because, lawyers like yourself can use them, organizations can use them, dispensaries can use them as a prop, and museums. I mean, the funny thing is, in the mid-'90s, when we decided to start selling them, we contacted DEA to see if we could legally sell them. And DEA came back saying, oh, no, they're your cans, but would you send us 4 empty ones for our museum? So then it goes one step further, which is funny. So now I become friends with a DEA agent who'd helped me in the past, and I'd helped him. So I was going to Washington to testify in Congress one time, and I called Tim, and I said, Tim, I'm coming to Washington. Let's get together and meet. We've never met before. He said, Irv, before you go to Capitol Hill, why don't you come to Arlington where DEA headquarters is? I went, well, I don't know if I really want to go to the headquarters, I've never met you or anything like that. I'm going to have a tin can of marijuana, full tin can with me to go to Capitol Hill. He said, well, across the street's a Starbucks. Why don't we meet across the street? So I said, okay. So we meet across the street, and he comes in, and we introduce each other, and we sit down, and the next thing I know, here come 3 guys over to the table. And they, of course, in really nice suits, and they had on their DEA badges or whatever. They might have been the heads of the DEA. And he called him over. Tim called him over. Tim Eastep called him over and says, come here. He said, this is Irv Rosenfeld, the federal patient. He opens the tin can and shows him the tin can with 300 marijuana cigarettes in there. And he said, this is what he gets from the federal government. And they were really good. They asked me brilliant questions, and I answered them, and they walked away. 2 minutes later, here come 3 more. So right away, I know he set me up, okay? So here come 3 more guys. And again, very polite. He does the same thing, and they ask great questions, and I answer them, and they were great. So then they go off, and here come 3 more. I'm thinking, come on, Tim, this is getting ridiculous. So they come over, and they ask questions, and they were fine. Everything was good. So now they're standing there. A black guy goes walking by, and he's by himself. So Tim yells to the guy, hey, come over here for a second. So the guy comes over. He says, what is it? He goes, this is Irv Rosenfeld. He's a federal patient. And here's his tin can. And they open the tin can and show them marijuana. And the black guy goes, well, I guess so, and starts storming away. And the 3 guys are laughing, and Tim is laughing. And I'm thinking, I don't know what's so funny. And I go, what's so funny? They go, his job and his only job in DEA is to go against medical marijuana. So now Tim says, Irvin, do you feel comfortable enough to walk across the street to the museum so we can show it to you and you can meet some other people? I said, sure, Tim, I'll do that. So I walk across the street with my tin can. He grabs a tin can before we go through security. He doesn't want me to go because it would set off security. So he was able to go around security, but he took my tin can. But they gave me a name tag with a really nice badge. I mean, it really was an official, DEA badge, and this was my name tag to go in. I'm thinking, this is a neat souvenir to have, So I go in, and sure enough, there's a museum, and they're showing me the entire museum. The curator happened to work for Judge Frances Young, who did the hearings in '88. She was one of his law review people that worked for him. So that made me feel good with Frances Young. And so they're showing me everything, and they get to my section where my 4 tin cans were. And they said, there for your 4 tin cans. I said, yeah. And each little display had a TV screen there that somebody narrated. So like you push a button and you could see, and they would narrate what you're seeing. Somebody would narrate it. They go, Irvin, we would like for you to narrate, this area. Would you do that for us? I said, well, I'll do that on one condition. They said, what? I said, you want everything to be, legal and everything to be truthful? They said, yes. I said, well, I don't see anything in here about Frances Young's hearing in '88 and '89 about when he said it was the most benign substance known to mankind and it should be made Schedule 2. I said, if you allow me to talk about that, I'll be glad to. They said, oh, we'll get back to you then. They never did. Okay. So, one of the little trials and tribulations of having a federal prescription, for it.
What a ride. What an amazing ride.
Yeah, it has been. It really has been. And I'm very fortunate. I mean, I've written a book, and it's called My Medicine, How I Convinced the U.S. Government to Provide My Marijuana and Help Launch a National Movement.
Say the name again. Give us the title again, please.
My Medicine, How I Convinced the U.S. Government to Provide My Marijuana and Help Launch a National Movement.
By Irvin
Rosenfeld. And you can order it on Kindle, or you can order it at my website to get a signed copy, www.mymedicinethebook.com. Repeat, that's www.mymedicinethebook.com. And it's $20 I sell them for. But the important thing about the book, when Bob Randall was dying, he was dying of AIDS, and he finished writing his book. And he didn't get to enjoy it that much because he died. And his book was excellent, fantastic book. And people should get it, Robert Randall. And the point is, if he hadn't written it down before he died, lots of things in the back room that happened, people would not have known about. And 8 years ago, I realized the same thing, that I'm not getting any younger, and that God forbid I die, everything that I've done in the back rooms and things like that die with me. So that's when I decided I need to write a book. So my book is my history as far as my bone disorder and, growing up, having surgeries, being a homebound student in Virginia, discovering, going to college and discovering marijuana, the 10-year struggle about taking on the federal government and finally winning, and then the trials and tribulations of being a federal patient and knowing what's happened. Plus, my book gives you the history of the medical marijuana movement in this country as seen through my eyes. Again, I helped pioneer this entire country, so I've seen everything that's transpired, and a lot of it, I had a hand in. And then, of course, there are different funny things like me getting busted by Mickey Mouse. As many people can say that, And
that's funny. The closest I ever came was in Disneyland.
Yeah, well, I got busted in Disneyland. Okay. And yeah, I did, and of course it didn't stick. Once they realized it was a federal patient, I wasn't breaking any law, but I was detained for 3 hours.
We evaded successfully.
Well, I'm going to detain you both for another 3 minutes, maybe even 4, while we do a commercial break and then listen to a song about how fantastic marijuana is. And then when we come back, we're going to pick up where we left off here at Time for Hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network.
Serious Seeds is your source for quality cannabis and sativa seeds. Serious Seeds are the creators of legendary strains like AK-47, Bubblegum, Chronic, Cali Mist, and White Russian. The AK-47 is probably the most awarded strain on the planet. The high THC content of AK-47 makes it the perfect medical strain for patients seeking quick pain relief. Cali Mist is an almost pure sativa. Female medical cannabis patients have reported that this strain helps relieve menstrual cramps. Serious Seeds just acquired another Dutch high-quality seed bank, Magus Genetics. From now on, Serious Seeds can offer you even more award-winning strains. The fine folks at Serious Seeds strive to breed the best cannabis genetics that they can find, so patients can rely on the effectiveness of their medicine. Go to SeriousSeeds.com to grow your medicine. That site again is SeriousSeeds.com.
I'm on a journey. You have to find me. Free deep in the ganja field. Hear me now, yo, yo, ahoy. Yo, so me take a journey out to Green Island. Me na ya bingy and the 12 tribe man. I say me heading to the hills, to the plantation. Me drink and the bunny granny can do some meditation. Me take a journey out to Green Island. Me na ya bingy and the 12 tribe man. I say me heading to the hills, to the plantation. Me drink and the bunny granny can do some meditation. Well, grab me water boot and cutlass with me. Then me saddle up the mule and the donkey. Then me get 4 hamper, get them ready. Then we send me face the Doberman and Rusty. Then call up me old gorilla daddy, a king and a prince, initiate a journey. Moses the first, the young warrior Nashi. See the people them a wish farewell to the two of we. While we head for the hills through the valley. Him pan the mule, me by him signs pan the donkey. Me reach in at the ganja field and feel we will drink some ganja. Tea calm the body and feel easy. Me take a journey out to Green Island. Me na ya bingy and the 12 tribe man. I say me heading to the hills, to the plantation. Me drink and the bunny granny can do some meditation. Me take a journey out to Green Island. Me na ya bingy and the 12 tribe man. I say me heading to the hills, to the plantation. Me drink and the bunny granny can do some meditation. Me walk, me look through the green pastures. Look to me right and me left, me stare and observe the fat and beautiful buds of herbs. Looking healthy, splendid, sharp and so superb. One thing me want to do now make me smoke disperse. Me eyes them red like blood, as if them go and burst. I just the after effect, the iron I no feel hurt. Just keep on smoking and make the cali weed burn. Meditation enhance and new knowledge me earn. I am a wiser man because of new things me learn. So me take a journey out to Green Island. Me na ya bingy and the 12 tribe man. I say me heading to the hills, to the plantation. Me drink and the bunny granny can do some meditation. Me take a journey out to Green Island. Me na ya bingy and the 12 tribe man. I say me heading to the hills, to the plantation. Me drink and the bunny granny can do some meditation. After me journey through the Green Island, gorilla warrior become a rough, a wiser man. Many things me learn get to really overstand. Why the policeman no really like ganja man. Them realize it is a true centuries old tradition. Them no want it for serve as the enhancing substance. Give me people little drugs to destroy me nation. Heroin, the crack, the coke and the speed. Other drugs me never see but them exist for real. Them invade, interrogate and destroy me ganja field. But all them a try, the gorilla still stand strong. I hell know that me journey through the Green Island. So me take a journey out to Green Island. Me na ya bingy and the 12 tribe man. I say me heading to the hills, to the plantation. Me drink and the bunny granny can do some meditation. Well, it sends me here now. Me give it a fight, but I tell you, this is one plant I adore, you know. Meditation, the enhancer. Free the eye mind, you know. I can connect with nature.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, iTunes. Anywhere there's sound found, we are bound to be there, and please share us with your friends. It is Wednesday, and on Wednesday I have Judge Leonard Frieling as my joint host. And, Your Honor, we have had a lot of fun this past couple of years working together and bringing a lot of information on Wednesday afternoons to all of our friends around the world, haven't we?
I look back on the number, the list, the content, and I'm thrilled with what we're doing. It's a treat for me to talk to the most important people in this piece of the world and to hear things from them directly. Our guest today, Irv Rosenfeld, the most famous of the government's original 6 compassionate care program, a man who is sent medical marijuana by the U.S. government at roughly a half a pound a month and has dedicated a huge amount of time and energy in his life to spreading the word. It's one thing to hear about it secondhand. It's another thing to listen to the man.
Well,
so
I appreciate that.
You.
And by the way, there were 13 patients.
There were 13?
There were 30. When the program was shut down in 1992 by George Bush Sr., there were 13 patients receiving marijuana at the time. There were another 28 patients that had been approved to receive the medicine by DEA, FDA, and NIDA. But when George Bush Sr. got Health and Human Services shut the program down, the 13 of us that were grandfathered in, so we didn't sue the government. But the 28 patients who never received any medicine, they were told to use Marinol. So they never received any marijuana, just the 13 of us. But a bunch of those were AIDS patients. And back in 92 and 93, they didn't have the cocktails for AIDS patients, and so they died.
They died in 6 months.
They died pretty quickly. Yeah, a bunch of those died pretty quickly. And it came down to 8 of us. It came down to 8 of us. And then 2 more died, which left 6, and then Bob Randall died, and then Corinne Millett died, and that left the 4 of us. So. And
you are, of course, currently continuing to receive the
yes,
medicine
and
hopefully
I will receive it for as long as I live, which the government is hoping is short term, so they can discontinue the program.
Now, outlive the bastards.
That's what I plan to do, and I hope LV does too.
And just for clarity,
and let me just say here for the moment before we get too far down the road, if you go into the archives of TimeForHemp.com and check out the past programs that have been done, you'll discover Irv has been a frequent guest over the years. He's part of our family, and you can listen to his other programs found in the archives. You can also hear from Elvie, and you can also hear from George McMahon. The only one who I don't have of the living 4 is, what is her name?
Barbara Douglas. She was getting it for multiple sclerosis, for MS.
Right, and the reason why was that she said it was just too difficult for her to converse by phone, and that was the only reason why she had to decline. But you can listen to 3 of the 4 patients and hear from their own words and their own stories in their own voice as to what they had to struggle with. Okay, that's all I wanted to say, gentlemen. Back to your conversation. Thank you.
Irv, for clarity, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty clear that right now we think there are, give or take, about 100 cannabinoids in the marijuana plant, in cannabis. Marinol is a single cannabinoid of the 100.
Correct. It's THC. It's synthetic THC is what it is. Okay, and the way I look at it is nobody really knows yet how all the different cannabinoids interact with each other. That's why it's so important for me to get the whole natural plant, not just a chemical here or a chemical there. And hopefully one day, when they're able to do research, they'll find the different strains that work best for different diseases. Because Elvie and I've always thought it's been very interesting that we get the same strain, and she has glaucoma, and I have something totally different. So we got to believe that that's the benefit of having different individual states, having different individual growers, because this way they can grow different strains and they can do, anecdotal research, especially with their patients, for people with glaucoma or muscle relaxation or anti-nausea from AIDS or chemotherapy, to where they would know what strains work best for different diseases. So I would think that there's strains out there that probably work a lot better for me than what the government gives me, and vice versa for Elvie. But we don't have that opportunity. So I'm just very thankful each day, that I have a prescription, that I don't have to worry about Johnny Law breaking down my door, and arresting me, or when I'm driving, or for me traveling. I mean, that's what's very beneficial is I'm able to travel to any U.S. territory, with my prescription, just like if it was Valium or insulin or any other prescription. That's all it is. So it's very important.
It strikes me that in a legal state where you had access to edibles, I don't know if they'd work for you, but it would certainly be eliminating the combustion and a longer lasting effect per dosing. I don't know the answer.
Well, I do when I speak, okay, different states and different venues. And number one, if you're a patient that is not familiar with cannabis, okay, that you're just learning about it, then I'm against edibles.
Absolutely.
Because most edibles are not water soluble. So therefore, you could have a candy bar that's broken up to 10 pieces, and supposedly they tell you to take 1/10, one piece of that 10 pieces of candy, but yet the cannabis, the ingredients, the medicine might just be in one piece. Okay, and you take that one piece, and if you're not familiar, you could get really, really, euphoric, and you could think you're in danger, and the next thing you know, you're calling an ambulance, and you're going to an emergency room. And then now the opposition says, oh, it's led to these many more people going to the emergency room. Where if you're knowledgeable and God forbid something like that happens, there's a drug that'll bring you down. Of course, I can't think of a name now. But anyway, the point is this: if you're knowledgeable, you know you've used too much. You know that you lay down and you're going to fall asleep, and that's the worst that's going to happen to you, and you're going to wake up fine. And so smoking to me, my lungs are perfectly normal. In fact, the last time they were checked, it was 108% of normal. But I think smoking for me is the best way to get the medicine. It's the quickest way, and I think the best way. Now, I do have a vape pen here at work that my girlfriend takes my medicine and makes oil out of that I can use in a vaporizer, a vape pen. And so this way, like even during this conversation with you, I've been using it here in my office. My firm does not mind at all because it has no smell to it. So while it helps, and I don't think it's as powerful or as beneficial as regular smoked marijuana. But some people don't want to smoke anything, which is up to them. I mean, that's their prerogative. So edibles or something, but they've got to be very, very careful with edibles. I'm not, like I said, I'm not a big fan of edibles. I mean, they give you a different effect every time. It really can. Sometimes it takes longer to come on. And so it's just that, I'm a sailor, so any port in a storm, beggars can't be choosy. So, for some people who are adverse to smoking or doesn't want to or can't for that matter, then edibles or something, or vaporization or something. So there are forms, of using the cannabis. It doesn't have to be in smoked form, but I do think that the natural plant in smoked form is the best way to ingest it.
Well, we have a huge education issue in Colorado where tourists with little or no exposure to either cannabis and certainly little or none to edibles fall into the trap of taking some candy, waiting 2 hours, not noticing anything, taking some more candy, and after a while they realize that they are ridiculously stoned. They're not in danger, but they may be a little anxious or uncomfortable for a while. And I couldn't agree with you more. It is not for beginners. And additionally, the dosage is a very tricky thing, and that we know is precisely the opposite of how well people have been scientifically shown to be able to self-titrate smoking. Mm-hmm. The effect is immediate enough so you can take a toke and pretty much know if you want to take one more or not.
Exactly. That's what I tell people. I mean, especially, people that are new, is that, whatever reason you're using, medically you're using cannabis for, you take a couple of tokes and wait 15, 20, 30 minutes. And if you relieved those medical conditions, great. If you haven't, take a couple more. Wait another 20, 30 minutes, and that's how you know when you've had enough and you don't overdo it.
Absolutely agreed at this end also. Mm-hmm. I'm 65, so we're in that similar range of exposure to life experiences and the like. And I'm sure I've had many younger days, although I really think that psychedelics tripping is a sport for younger men than I.
Yeah, I would agree to that now too. I tried it, when I was, in my teens and mostly my teens, because when you're in pain, you'll try anything. And when I was at college and I tried mescaline and acid, I found it to be a great painkiller. And so, And so I really kind of liked it for that reason. So when I talked to my orthopedic surgeon about that, because I was thinking of maybe even putting in a protocol for LSD, for my disorder. And we talked about it. He said, Irvin, he said, I'd like for you to try it a little more often and see what you think of it before we start trying to write up a scientific project and do this, this, and this, and this. So then I went and got a little more and tried it on a more normal basis for like 2 weeks. And while it worked great, it just upsets your entire life. I mean, your sleeping habits, your eating habits, and everything else. So that's when I decided that, no, this was not a medicine to be able to use, that often. And when I told my doctor, I said, Doc, I said, I'll tell you what's best about LSD and mescaline. If you've got a good head on you, I mean, you really, really have a good head on you, and you've got to go through surgery, let's say on Monday, then Saturday, trip on acid. As long as you're not scared about the surgery on Monday, you might not want to do it. Nobody does. But you go, God, I got to have surgery on Monday, so I'm going to have surgery on Monday. And it's not worrying you because you know you got to have it. Well, then Saturday, drop some acid. Have a good time. It'll clean your mind out, your thoughts and things like that, and you'll enjoy it. I said, as long as you take that attitude, as long as you've never had a bad trip, which I never did. But it's all mental. You've got to have a good mental attitude to do something like this. Otherwise, it could be a very harmful drug. So that's my recommendation for patients. Trying to use medical acid.
Let me shift directions a little bit. For the greatest part of your life, you have been a top-level, effective activist, advocate. For those of us, younger, older, who are also activists, what can you share? What have you learned about how to be an effective activist?
Well, I'm glad you asked how to become an effective activist. One of the important aspects, I believe, is that you need to be able to have your family, and especially your family, but close friends, understanding what you're doing and accepting what you're doing. And if they don't, if you can't explain to your parents or to your closest friends, the importance of medical cannabis, and they think the whole thing is just, all you really want to do is get high, then you need to convince them. And getting a copy of my book and getting it to those people, I think would be invaluable, because my book is going to give you the entire story of a real patient and what I've had to go through, my life dealing with, the bone disorder, then discovering marijuana, then the battle of taking on the federal government for 10 years, which was not easy, and then being a federal patient. I mean, this gives you the true life history of a patient. So if anybody reads that, they're going to then say, okay, now I understand what you're trying to do. So then once you get them behind you, now go forward and try to convince people that you don't know. And the way to do that is, number one, always try to understand that you're a patient. You're not a lobbyist. A lobbyist is supposed to know everything. You're a patient. You don't know everything. So if somebody brings up something to you that you don't know the answer to, don't make something up. Either you have the answer or just say, look, I don't know the answer to that. And if they go, well, you're supposed to know the answer to everything, go, wait a minute, I'm just a patient. I happen to know more than most people because I'm a patient, but no, I'm not a lobbyist. I don't know it all. I don't know history, dates, things like that. No, I'm not a lobbyist. Plus, you need to look the part. You need to look better than the people you're speaking to. So you don't go lobbying in a T-shirt with a pot leaf on it, okay? You never do that. I mean, you've got to get a coat and tie, or if you're a female, you're in a dress. You've got to look better than they are. And when opposition comes, which is going to happen all the time, remember, they're educated. They are brilliant people. At least they think they are. But they've usually got degrees, doctorates or things like that. They're just misguided or just they don't understand. So what you've got to do is try to make them understand. And what I try to tell people is this. Look, between you and I, you're at Z. You're totally against me. I'm at A. You know what I need to do? I need to try to get you to meet me at M in the middle. And so that's really what I try to do. Because you're not going to convince them totally. But if you can just get them to question, their thought and to say, well, maybe you're right. Because when people, which they won't get on stage with me, but if they do, and they talk about how bad it is for the lungs, how bad it is for the brain, and for reproductive or whatever they want to talk about how bad it is, I just go, you seem very knowledgeable. What do you have, a doctorate in something or a master's? And they'll say, oh, yeah, that, I said, well, if all that's true that you're saying and you truly believe it, then explain me. Very simple. And before Ethan Russo's study in 2001, well, the four of us federal patients. What the opposition would say is that you're an anomaly, Irvin. You're the 85-year-old man who's been smoking 3 packs of cigarettes per day since he was 13, and says, what do you mean cigarette smoking causes lung cancer? Look at me. I'm 80 years old, and I've been smoking all this, and I don't have lung cancer. So they say I'm the anomaly. Once Ethan did that research on the four of us, and all four of us came out perfectly normal, now what are they going to say? Gee, you're the only 4 people in the country that it doesn't harm negatively, but everybody else in the country, it's going to harm. You know?
Well, one thing that's true with that, too, is that Father Time has the same effect on me as it does on everyone else in the country. And it says, tick, tick, we have 2 minutes left in this hour before we have to say so long, farewell, bye-bye. So put a spotlight on your favorite URLs, and we'll start with our guest. Please, Irv.
Okay, well, again, to order my book is www.mymedicinethebook.com. And you can even also order a tin can through there, or you can contact me at my phone number, which is 954-689-6875, which is work again, 954-689-6875. I'd love to take people on as clients, and the way I tell clients this is because every client has to know that I use medical cannabis, is the expertise I use to take on the federal government is the expertise I use in my business. So if you want that kind of expertise as a broker, then you want me for your broker. If not, have a good life. But whatever you do, try to remember that whether you're a Democrat or Republican, cancer, AIDS, sickness, doesn't know what policy you're under or what religion you are. It's still going to attack you. So try to allow other, even if you don't want to use it, try to allow qualified physicians the right to be able to use it along with other meds.
Beautiful. And my joint host today, Judge Leonard Frieling.
Thanks, Casper. MyCanaryApp.com. MyCanaryApp.com. An iPhone application developed by Mark Silverman and me, which measures performance rather than blood chemistry. It looks at whether or not your reaction time is slower than it normally would be rather than chemistry. So we don't care if you're tired and had one joint with a beer the day before. You just really need to know how you're doing. Check it out. My Canary app or straight into the iTunes store, My Canary. Leap.org. Okay, strike that. LEAP, leap.cc, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, former top level narcotics officers and others who have now come to the other side of the fence and realized that they were in the past simply wrong. And of course, normal.org, NORML.org, who have been there for us from the beginning and continue to be.
And I want to remind people that if you happen to hear me the next time, you'll know that it is time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look and spend some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, 'cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network.